No. Am I in the right place? No? Maybe if I... How's that? Great to see so many friends, colleagues, and Anatolian researchers here, as well as Aphrodisian students, past, present, and future. Thank you, William, for guiding us through the AGM. I'd like to express warm thanks, especially to our Honorary Secretary, William Chubb, for organising this event and for so much more. And to our trustees, headed by John Scott, who's made a strong mark in his first year as chairman. Also to Christabel and Eliza Chubb, who just saw fixing our streaming. They've come to our IT rescue and assure a smooth simulcast. I'd also like to say a warm thank you to Renata and Peter Nahum for services to the Friends beyond the call of normal humanity. Aphrodisias is a joint project of the Ministry of Culture in Ankara with New York and Oxford universities, and it is a pleasure to thank the Ministry for the fundamental permissions that make our work possible. We've had a busy year. The Friends have had a busy year. I'd just like to... I would like to highlight our wonderful field trip to Roman Silchester in Hampshire, expertly guided by the site's director, Professor Mike Fulford. I think these engaged images speak for themselves. At Aphrodisias, we are investigating the strange, overspecified, monumental culture of the Eastern Roman Empire, the kind of turbocharged construction that produced things like the Tetrapylon Gateway. We're also, as you will see, looking at the city's long, late antique life and beyond. So first, a brief introduction to the site and to our project. I'll be brief because I think most of you here know. So Aphrodisias is located in inland Caria, south of the Meander River. It was a prosperous city that flourished within the first 3 centuries AD as part of the Roman province of Asia. And then from the 4th to the 6th centuries, it was a provincial capital. Both of these were very high and special statuses. The city was famous for its Temple of Aphrodite and for its marble carvers, who produced striking statues of local bigwigs like the guy on the right. These are typical, this is a typical representation of the Greek Roman aristocracy that ran the empire. Aphrodisias was a planned drawing board style city with a clear organization of walls, gridded housing, and a new planned urban center. It's medium-sized in ancient terms. We can argue about the population if you want, but somewhere between 5,000 and 15,000. Oops. The city was blessed with a fertile territory and marble quarries close by. And the site today is known for its beautiful combination of nature and ruins and for its exceptional preservation. There's lots of extraordinary public buildings which served politics, religion, entertainment, what any self-respecting city of the period felt it needed. So everyone had to have at least 1 or 2 sets of baths for bathing and exercise. Most cities had all cities had a stadium, many had a bouleuterion, and some had a stadium for assemblies and for games. These are more or less functional buildings. The city also had completely unfunctional structures like this, the tetrapylon, which simply marked the transition from public space on the street to Aphrodite's space inside. These things are all more or less typical of Eastern Roman culture in the 2nd century AD. But Aphrodisias also had some unique structures with which they sought to outdo their neighbors. Things like the great Sebastion complex, a temple for the emperors with some 200 marble reliefs. No other city had a Sebastion quite like this. The city centre has a clear drawing board design with the public buildings fitted to the grid, with long Ionic colonnades like that on the right. This is citizen space where citizens walked, talked, and shopped. So, what do we do? We do excavation, it's the Tetrapylon Street. We do conservation, piecing back together fragmented statues like this, a new statue of Tiberius, put together in 23 by our Cliveden colleagues. I'm so pleased to see here this evening. We do anastylosis. Anastylosis is merely a posh word for putting ancient buildings back up accurately. And this is the, excuse me, this is the temple of the Sebastion, which we'll come back to later. We also do a lot of 3D reconstructions, attempts to put all our knowledge into reconstructions which show it like it really was. This is the inside of the basilica. It's our duty to explain what we're doing to the public through images like this. Everything here, of course, is entirely accurate. We also do a lot of publication. You see here 2 recent volumes, Michael Crawford's great volume on Diocletian's edict, and a massive book on the excavation of the place of palms on the right. As I like to say to my colleagues who don't like to hear it, but I like to say, if you don't publish it, you may as well never have done it. We also do a lot of education. We have weekly seminars by senior colleagues, and you see here Gerhard Paul explaining to assembled students last season just how you go about the kind of anastylosis that you see behind him. All this work is made possible by an amazing body of sponsors whom you see listed here. It's a long list, and the project is expensive and requires a very varied set of supporters. You see here in the first group there, highlighted the Friends of Aphrodisias Trust in London, one of our one of our longest and most generous body of donors. This support enables the work of a large international team of about 40 students and colleagues, and about 60 workers from the surrounding valley. You see here the archaeological team surrounding the great head of Zeus in our marble workshop one day in August. I'd like to start with this this head of Zeus. This is section 1 of what we did last summer. Quite unexpectedly and through no skill of our own, this thing turned up at the most inconvenient moment imaginable. We were in the middle of a day's filming with Bethany Hughes, and we'd been instructed by Ankara we weren't to show any new finds to anybody until they'd been seen by the authorities. So we had to try and secrete this monster past Bethany's team and into the depot. It was found during grass clearance. We were told to make with a kind of harrow. We were supposed to plough an area right around the city centre to make a fire break. And this harrow caught the edge of this thing, which was face down in the dirt. And you see it, you see where it was found. That's the Temple of Aphrodite in the background. So still very much in the unexcavated part of the city centre. It's quite a thing. It's about this high. Here's the red dot showing where it was caught by the harrow, and the red dot on the right showing where it is in relation to the temple. Here it is being brought in on our trolley by three of our workers trying to hurry past Bethany's team. On the left, you can see already that this thing has astonishing drilled and carved detail. So it goes into the depot workshop, where it is worked on by our conservators. And you see here working only with the slenderest of wooden toothpicks. First of all, dry on the right, in case there's any polychromy left. There was indeed some black in the hair and brown on the neck. And then once that's been dealt with, then wet cleaning on the left. It then goes for dress photos, and you can see it's not a head of a statue. It's actually a head attached to a background. It's attached to a large console. So it was an architectural member projecting probably over the top of a massive arch or something like that. It has a very sensitive portrait-like face with this abundant long hair. It looks like the carver has been given a new set of drills for Christmas to do the extravagant hair and beard. The thing is wearing a diadem, flat band, so it's a royal divinity. Long hair means a god, and it has the forked beard and upturned hair of Zeus. And indeed, if you put it beside Zeus, you can see the affinity. The new one, however, has none of these long locks on the side of the head. They're all gone here. They're all brushed to the back. And the features of the face have, many people commented on this when it was found, that it has a kind of portrait-like aspect, but it's clearly not a portrait, but the sculptor was clearly thinking about contemporary imperial portraits of the later 2nd century. Here's a portrait of the Emperor Marcus Aurelius. You see where he's got the idea of this extravagantly drilled upturned hair. It's a way of using portrait technology, was a way of making this local Zeus a more vivid contemporary image. Few details. There's the extravagant drilling on the side of the head. The mouth, it's got teeth inside the open mouth, and it's got an engraved line along the lower lip in an imitation of bronze work. I know you're going to ask, why didn't you investigate where it was found? Well, we did. We ran our GPR, that's ground penetrating radar, over the exact spot and found there's a north-south street here, a large kind of public building or colonnade here, and it's in the middle of an empty space. This is probably some kind of sanctuary space. So much for our serendipitous use. And now come to our most astonishing and most important field project last summer, the House of Kibberley, which William mentioned, and we're delighted to have the additional support of the Headley Trust to add to those on the screen. The Kibberley House is a large mansion here. You see it in an old photograph in 2022. The red dot marks the fine spot of these statuettes, which we've shown often before. There's a lot of news about both of these figures and this base. They're not quite seen here, not quite how they should be. The house is located in the northwestern part of the city, up against the city wall, or close to the city wall. The city wall is here. There's a big warehouse here, which we excavated the year before. The house itself is just here, and a street runs between the warehouse and the house. You may remember last year, one of the most astonishing finds was this little restaurant or cafe built onto the street in the 6th century, complete with all its pottery inventory. This year we worked here and here. I'm going to talk just about the larger red circle because this is where the real excitement came. This is a view of underneath that red circle. You saw that's the beginning of the apse there, which you now see fully exposed. What we were looking for between this apse, which is part of the public part of the house facing south, and the street here, we thought between the street and the apse, there should be the service quarters of the house. We were looking for the modest world of the servants and slaves of the household. Instead, we found something quite different. We're going to go now into room 12, where a lot of the action took place. We're now looking the other way in room 12, looking east, and room 12 was underground. It was covered over with a brick vault, nicely made high imperial brick vault with a lot of niches for small figures or lamps, but this space is completely covered over up to this level with a kind of piano nobile on top of it. So that's one level underground. There's then another level underground that. First of all, there is this very curious sinking into the floor, which is a hole in the floor, which you can go down with footsteps here, like a primitive ladder, but it goes nowhere. You can sit in the bottom, you can stretch out your legs halfway, but that's about it. No one has yet come up with a good explanation of what this was for. Take suggestions later. We now go along room 12 into room 11 through this doorway, and you see a brick arch behind, and underneath that brick arch is a set of stairs going down. You go down into a tunnel, and you come into a wider tunnel here that's got niches for lamps or other things to light it. You go to the end and turn right, and then there's a longer tunnel here, narrower. And what's important here is that the effect on the surface of the wall, which is created by water dripping down it and then that calcifying, is deliberate. There's leaky pipes placed above it to allow water to trickle down to create the interior effect of a kind of cave. It's it's strange. It's not any kind of service corridor like you might think. So you entered the tunnel here. That's room 11. You go underneath this arch. You then turn right and you follow the apse. The narrower part of the tunnel follows the apse around like this and then comes out here in rooms 21 and 22. So you're going from there to there. It's not for any practical function. This is to do with this strange goings on in this underground zone. This underground zone, the access we have not yet found. We're going to excavate more to the west. We haven't got to the end of room 12. In the meantime, there is this kind of ladder cuttings in room 23 over here, which is like an access shaft, which had at the bottom a bronze lamp with a wick still in it. This may have been the kind of secret access, if you like, into room 12. So what went on in room 12? Well, oops. Sorry, before we go to room 12, in room 22 has niches for busts and statues, and one of these was recovered, a fragment of a bust which with breasts on it, which looks like it's part of a bust of the Artemis of Ephesus, a famous, much-loved pagan icon. In room 12, underneath this niche here, this setback and on the north wall where the white arrow is pointing, was found a remarkable assemblage in situ. And you see here on the right, Ina Jacobs, our field director, who masterminded this whole operation. This whole assemblage here looks like it has pancaked from above. You look carefully in the brickwork here, there was a wooden shelf, which all this material is probably on and has just fallen down in situ. There was a lot of other stuff in this room, which was then scattered across the floor. The material consists of ceramics, glass, bronze vessels, and some marble figures. You see a little marble statuette there. These small marble cult figures, and there are indeed several, are of great interest. This is what was found this last year. And these other two circles are bodies of finds made earlier, where and the material between these three areas intersects. In other words, pieces from here join pieces from here, pieces from here join pieces from there. So these are parts of a later cleanup operation where someone has gone in and tried to fish out the valuable bits, and they've left kind of stashes in these 3 points. So there are several cult figures which I want to show you. The first one is we're calling her Kybele 1. There are 3 Kybeles. Kybele, the great Asiatic mother goddess, god of the land and fertility and prosperity. You see her here in her disaggregated 6 parts in which she was excavated, and you see her here put together in a preliminary way in our small finds laboratory. You see from the arm holding it together, the scale, so the thing is about this size. Not a small little statuette, but a small figure. You see it now put together properly, and you can see it's heavily overspecified in terms of its attributes. Starting at the top, she's wearing a mural crown of a city, like Kibele often does. But then underneath that, she has an astonishing attribute. You can see it's gilded. It was a gilded diadem of the kind worn by late antique emperors and empresses. So they've given their Kibele statue the unusual attribute of supreme imperial power. She's holding a libation bowl in her right hand, and in her left hand, a cornucopia. You see, the cornucopia is not just a regular cornucopia, it's a double cornucopia. It had two horns coming out of it. Underneath her feet is a lion, which of course is the favored animal attribute of Kibele, which she has her feet on. She has a footstool, which she's kind of kicked to one side, and she's put one foot on the back of the lion, who doesn't look so happy about it. Please note that her footwear, she is wearing normal goddess sandals with a V-shaped thong through the large toe and the next toe. Kibele number 2 is the goddess seated in a rocky mass. It's a rock formation. She's seated in her own essence. You see she's wearing closed contemporary shoes. So it's an updating of the Kibele format. It's definitely her because she had a lion seated in her lap. You can see the lion's front paws here, back paws here. Kibele number 3 is the, oh dear, is the figure found back in the mid-80s in this curated pile. This year we found in this area here, her right arm holding a globe. Again, another symbol of contemporary imperial power. You can see in the depot the right arm being fitted to the body of the upper body of the Kibele. I should say that all of these finds, of course, were found at the bottom after 2 months of excavation. All this was found in the last few days. So we had to run across this. The right arm and globe were in our depot, but the figure found earlier was in the museum depot. So we had to run across and be allowed to test it and take this rather rough and ready picture. You can see from her face and eye forms that this is a typical late antique kind of carving of probably the 5th century. What's really exciting about the archaeology of this, we can see when this complex was set up, sometime in the 5th century, at the height of pagan Christian oppositionality, but it continued all the way through until the final disaster of the house in the early 7th century. So the most astonishing new item here is not having private pagan statues, that's surprising enough, but that they're still in use and being worshipped right up to the 600 and just after. Other things found on the floor, a head of Athena, goddess of wisdom, goddess of Athens, always welcome in late pagan circles, and the goddess Aphrodite on the right, with an extraordinarily manipulated abstract form of clothing. Again, typically late. This long, slender nose and these eye markings are typical late antique. There was news about the base, which we saw earlier, and this figure, which we also saw earlier. We found a plinth which fits into the right-hand sinking. And we always thought that this figure, which we labeled Zeus, fitted in this sinking on the base. This turned out to be incorrect because this figure fits on these feet break to break. He now becomes a figure with a snake wrapped around the tree trunk which supports him, so he's probably Asclepios, not Zeus. Asclepios, of course, one of the great miracle-working, healing divinities that's a direct competitor for Christ's healing activities. Anyone who wants to know what the secret symbols are on the base here will have to see me afterwards. I can only tell one person at a time. To finish this assemblage of remarkable cult images, and that's indeed what these things are. This is not an art collection. These are not collected as some set of great artworks. These are collected for worship. One more was found here in the walkway around the apse, behind the apse. This curious thing which Ina and Recep are holding is a curious and puzzling thing, but you can see it's made up with a carved rock formation and a little bit of carving at the bottom. Rocky formation, that's all carved all round and finished. When you turn it round, it's got a smooth back, and the back is cut out like a bust. It's got a flat bottom, so it's meant to stand up like this, and seems to be some kind of representation, an iconic, non-representational representation of a mountain god, such as appears on many coins of the Roman province of Asia. This would be for some secondary attached image, precious metal image of the god. Maybe another Kibble, who knows? For those of you who are skeptical, this is not just an art collection. We have very serious cultic objects as well alongside these images. Perhaps most telling, a very large selection of the bases for incense burners. If you're burning incense and you have small figures, you're doing serious pagan cult worship. Along with the small divinities come miniature lamps and miniature vessels. Small gods need small items. So there is serious pagan worship going on in private in a period at which it's no longer allowed in public. It's banned by imperial law. And we know all about this at Aphrodisias from a variety of sources. Aphrodisias was on a kind of holy triangle of philosophical centers. There was Alexandria, Aphrodisias, and Athens. And we know about philosophers who go around this triangle sharing Neoplatonic lore and their scriptures of Hellenism in their kind of Neoplatonic fight against their rearguard action against ascendant Christianity. That context is all well known at the point this is set up. What's surprising here, as I said, is the long life of this. Well, these people in this house are doing this a lot longer than they should have been. The House of Kibble is part of a larger program of looking at the housing of Aphrodisias, and we're coming at this through excavation and other means. But we're also excavating another house. Oops, so that's the main 5 cult figures: 3 Kibbles, and Athena and Aphrodite. The other house we're excavating is again a continuation of an excavation started by Kenan and Erim. We're going back over the old excavation and enlarging the house and investigating its character. if the Kybele had this secret pagan cult underground cellar, this house, the North Temenos house as it's called, couldn't be more different. It's located right next to the Temple of Aphrodite and shares a wall with the sanctuary, has a great big reception apse, and it has a great big reception room in which is a statue base, a statue inside the house, on which is a Latin inscription, which talks about the giving of justice. So this must be giving of justice from a tribunal. So this must be a governor's statue. Latin is the language of the Roman government. So a statue of a governor in a house can really only be the governor's house. So, and this is indeed the kind of address one might expect the governor to be in. And this is, 98% the governor's house, and the very first governor's house located in the Eastern Mediterranean. Many people have looked for them on spurious grounds. This is the first one that's got really solid evidence. What we're doing here is expanding the excavation because we think the house was a lot bigger than what was excavated back in the 80s. We're excavating to the north and to the east, finding lots of interesting things on the way, a complete history of the house from before it was a house right through to its medieval phases. You see here, there's a small statuette found where the red dot is. These are sinkings below the floor where we found a lot of early pottery going back to the Augustan period, long before the house was built. This was clearly already a valued residential area. This curious chamber without a door, N7A, had within it a huge mass of broken pottery, filled right up to 1.5 meters. It was clearly a support for something that was on top of it, made solid by redeployed pottery. But very curiously, it had at the bottom, right at the bottom, one of these 6th century ampullae, and then another one put right on the top. Very strange. We think the house continues this way and this way, and this way and that way. And we're finding that both in the excavation here and in our GPR geophysical survey. This is running a ground penetrating radar machine over the surface, which allows you to see what's there at different levels in black and white. We're getting a lot more detail out of the old street grid, and for the North Temenos house, we're able to show that the house here continued much further to the east and probably to the north. I know you're all dying to see what a ground penetrating radar machine looks like. That's it. With our Melda Küçükdemirci operating it. I'd like to turn now to some other aspects of our work more briefly. We're working still in the Sevasteion. There's a lot of work still to do, both on the entrance gate and on the temple, and a little bit on the north building. This is the entrance gate, where you see the Tiberian, the early 1st century AD level of the street, and then 1 meter above it, the late antique 6th century street level, with a drain running down underneath it. And we're here trying to arrange this area so that you can see both street levels and make a way from there through the gate into the Sevasteion. This is looking back towards that gate. That's the propylon as the gate. We're standing on the temple looking west. So we're working on the temple and a little bit on the north building here. These are 3.5 columns we've so far set up of the temple. We want to show the effect of the temple at the end of this 90-meter long complex. It's really the high point and the whole culmination of the celestial complex. We've got a lot more to do. This is a theoretical diagram of the amount of columns and other pieces we have. Thomas and Gerhard are anastylosis experts, hard at work on it. This year we spent a lot of time doing what our structural engineer told us we had to do. That is make a physical connection between the restored columns here and the parts of the building behind, the earth behind, by making physical connections with rods between that part and this part. And this is what the this is what the structural engineer's diagram looked like. Very painful to observe, but once the work is done, you don't feel it. That's all that work now stops those columns eventually going like this forwards. You see the 90-meter avenue coming towards the temple. You perhaps see it a bit better in this view. Here's the entrance gate. You walk up, and there's the columns of the temple at the end. So the temple was very much the whole point of this magnificent complex. We're doing a little bit of work on the north building just here. This was set up again in some haste when first excavated in 79 to 80. And what we're doing is taking the old restoration down, cleaning off the parts, seeing what joins with what exactly, and then adding a little bit more to it in as far as we can. We also have a new sponsorship, wonderful new sponsorship, to do some work on the east end of the temple church, which is heavily encumbered with blocks and other things and is not understandable by the public at all. We want you to understand, standing here, looking that way, what was going on. This was it before we started work. A lot of extraneous material, not really understandable. The first thing we did is to clear it all away. And you see the temple on screen around the holy part of the church. We're looking at the apse of the church made out of the old temple. You see the Kiborion just here with its 4 columns. You see the sacred well behind it, the Sunthronon for the clergy behind that, and then what was a huge apsidal window in the east end of the church. So we'll do more work here and then put a 3D reconstruction which shows you exactly this view fully restored. Part of this work is taking place outside. That's the east end of the temple church just there. This is the line of the old sanctuary, the old imperial period sanctuary, and that's the gate into it. From that gate come a series of remarkable sculptures, which we retrieved from the long grass and cleaned and set up and photographed. These are what are called in the trade protomes. That's the forepart of animals cut off at the chest, jumping out of an architectural member to protect whatever is underneath. And you see that here made up, oh, you can't see. There was a lion here, a bull here, and then a lion eating a bull's head here. You can see that's the lion eating the bull in profile. And these are embedded at the upper level of this passageway with the animals looking down on you as you go through. So as you went through, there was one set of three on each side. We continued work in the great urban park, whose excavation we finished a long time ago, 2017. We've since been working on the restoration of this sensitive marble perimeter, hoping eventually to open this to the public. We came very near to completing the restoration work this year. This is the conservation rig that's been going right around the whole circumference, picking up all the stones and resetting them as needed, so that it becomes a robust, tourist-proof facility. You see the work right down the north. The south side is finished. We're here almost at the end of the long north side. And I show you again our very recently published volume 14, Aphrodisias 14, on the urban park place of palms. And this is, we also have been doing a 3D reconstruction. This is a 3D reconstruction of what it was like to be in that place of palms, the pool, little frog fountains, palm trees, colonnades behind. As I think I've said before, everything here is entirely accurate. Again, anyone who doubts it, they can see me afterwards. Anastylosis is not only extremely expensive and time-consuming to carry out, it also requires careful maintenance. Once you restore a building like this, it needs to be looked after. It can't just be left. And every 5 to 7 years, we have to scaffold one side and then the other side and check the water runoff, check the pointing, check there's no water ingress into the joint. So this year we did the west side, and we're going to make a whole new display of the street and the tetrapylon with again a 3D reconstruction. This is up on top of that building in a part you can't see. You see here all the freshly treated joints, so water will run off, and then a new insulation material that is ultra waterproof on top. Isonomem BE89. I'm sure our conservation colleagues know all about it. It's applied in 3 layers and prevents water ingress. So that's the inside. This is the outside. A beautiful, typical Aphrodisian carving of small putti out hunting in acanthus scrolls. This is way up in the air. We also do a lot of study for publication. We have a lot of people who are coming only to work on their publications, bodies of material or buildings they're working on. I'd just like to show you some of this study for publication work. So, for example, one of our colleagues is working on the architecture of the Sebasteum, Phil Stinson, and Julia Lanigan is working on the statuary that went on the gate. And this year we were able to put together another statue that comes from this already overcrowded propylon gate. Aphrodisias has over 2,000 surviving inscriptions. It's a very talkative place. This is not prehistoric archaeology. They tell us all about their inner thoughts and needs, for which we're very grateful. Our epigraphist, Angelos Kaniotis, whom you see here delivering a seminar on the most interesting find of the year, is currently making a new corpus that pulls together all the inscriptions found since he started in the mid-90s and all the other inscriptions found back to the beginning of time. As usual, there were new inscriptions. Perhaps the most exciting is this block here, which you see joined to two other blocks. This is a fascinating statue base set up by the Patris, by the fatherland, for a man called Gaius Julius Magnus Longianus. He turns out to be a well-known Aphrodisian. He's a highly successful tragic playwright. Very interesting in its own right, but there's more to it. He's being honored on the front, but on this side and on the other side are two sections from a dossier of his activities. And on one side, he is being sent to speak to some Roman official on behalf of the city. And on the other side, this side, he's being sent to speak to the emperor. He's been sent to Trajan. And it's a very interesting reflection of the importance of these high-grade, highly educated intellectuals as interlocutors with Roman power. They were the most effective speakers. And you see that base here, all three parts being glued and gelled together immediately. The safest place for these fragments is put back together straight away. Aphrodisias also has an obscene amount of coins. They've found every year in large quantities. We have a huge inherited backlog, and we have things like this hoard of more than 4,000 silvered Antoniniani of the period AD 250 to 275. You see here our team of numismatists hard at work in the numismatic room where they process this. Half of them work on Islamic coins, half of them work on Roman period coins. This hoard goes up to the reign of Aurelian here. And you see on the other side the young king of Palmyra, Vaballathos. That's before Aurelian had him dealt with. We're doing a lot of work on the mosaics from the basilica. We're doing a lot of work on the huge quantities of glass found in the street excavations and elsewhere, crates and crates of table glass and window glass. We have excellent colleagues working on bones. You see here Yağmur Başaran, I'm pleased to see is here this evening, laying out a child's skeleton, and our colleague Muradi Busala is an expert on late antique and Islamic pottery on the right. So that's as far as we got. I leave you with an image of the House of Kibali and the Kibali statuette and the remarkable complex of the underground cult dungeon. I hope I've given you some idea of what we're doing at this amazing site. Thank you.
I wanted to thank Professor Smith on behalf of all of us for a fantastic introduction and a wonderful combination of context and detail. Everything from Zeus's teeth to governance.
The only governor's palace. Yeah.
Palace, and there's a wonderful throwaway remark, the only one to be marvelous. So thank you very much, and I'm sure you've got lots of questions. So can I?
Yeah, Dick, questions are always welcome to verify what was said. Yeah.
I was interested to see the plinth in the governor's house. I had a Latin inscription.
Yes.
Now, is it true that Latin was really only used for sort of official, almost imperial inscriptions? And if so, what is the latest Latin inscription found? When did it die out?
Latin never dies out.
Yes, but that's like
You mean in Aphrodisias? Well, to be honest, it never really got going. We have Diocletian's Price Edict. We have a few passing soldiers who died, who were buried there, and have Latin inscriptions. And we have this. Luckily, Charlotte is sitting 2 down from me, and she can tell me exactly how many Latin inscriptions we have. Not many. It's the language. Latin is the language of the Roman army, and it's the language of the Roman government when it wants to speak to you in its voice of maximum authority. Yes, John.
What's the Jubilee House here? There are obviously all these strange goings on and worshipping beneath the ground. Was the house itself a private house, and do we think that was a family affair? What was maybe family and friends coming to light their incense and make their offerings, or something else?
It's emphatically private. Emphatically private. You cannot now engage in visible public worship of images of the pagan gods in the 5th century. It's been outlawed and no one is doing it. If you want to carry on, and some aristocrats did want to carry on, they're still worshippers of Aphrodite, Cybele, you are able to carry on in the privacy of your own house where Roman law does not penetrate. But it is interesting, it is not in anything that could be called a public part of the house. It's not in the grand reception apse, which we know is there. It's in the back part of the house. And we have exactly the same thing in another grand house of the period, where we have another big apse and then a private part of the house in which are found 3 black marble altars with little sumps on the top for blood, where the chicken's blood is going to spill out after you've cut its throat. But yes, in private. And this is doubly private. It's not only in the private part of the house, it's also underground. And, it's not only that they're worshipping these things in the room 12, but they're doing a bit more than that, because they're leading like-minded pagans down into this tunnel, where you feeling your way in the dark or half dark, with strange water running down the walls, and there's going to be little images in niches. It looks a little bit like some kind of initiation, mysteries, that kind of thing. It's a bit more than just a pinch of incense to my favorite deity. It looks like initiation. That's the tunnel part. The tunnel part is not a service corridor. Yes.
The head of Zeus turning up in a chancy way. So what's going on in that part of town? And why would there be a colossal head of Zeus, unlike so far anywhere else? And have you a plan? Is it this year's plan to excavate that area and find out more about it, or is it just a question of keeping the grass trimmed?
Well, as you know, we're enormously restrained. We follow our program of research. We don't stop and run off just because something's been found over here and dig a large hole. We stick to what we're doing, and we produce results like the House of Cybele. We could have stopped everything and excavated there and maybe found nothing. It's a very curious find situation, it has to be said. Aphrodisias is a very rich site, but how and why something like that should be so close to the surface is strange. I would say if there's one like that, there's going to be more. One console bust on its own is unlikely. It's of an absurdly high quality for a piece of architecture way up in the air like that. There's many puzzles about it, but it's certainly, I would have said, from some kind of sanctuary context. At the most, I think we might do more geophysical work. We'll run our ground penetrating radar further over that area to see what we can see before we do anything further.
And then it's a matter of proposing at some stage in the future that it joins the programme of work.
Yeah, might do.
Get what approval from the ministry.
We could put it in our program of work if we wanted and say, yes, that would not be difficult. We would be probably pushing at an open door there. I can see you're thinking, why doesn't he just get on with it? Because we're driven by scientific questions, that's why. Yes.
The routing apses that you see, they all have the off-center entryway, which feels like, oh, given it's such an axial space, just to have the movement to be off-center, that is there.
So
The apse itself, the niche at the back is at the central point with that big statue, and then the movement from there is to the left. That entrance there.
that's a very late entrance. It's been punched through the wall for
Oh, I see.
reasons I'm not quite sure why. Normally there are niches around the backs of these things, and then sometimes architectural framing on top of that. They're the often decorated apses of a rather spectacular kind we have in another house. Ina, is that on axis or not?
Niches, that is beneath its late Ottoman and has to do with when they use the houses and quarry, has nothing to do with the late antiquity.
Yes,
Is that the Hughes program being produced new yet?
I think it's been, hasn't it? I think I missed it. I think it was shown. It was part of a, Adventures in Anatolia, whatever it was called. But there were several other sites inside which Aphrodisias was featured. I mean, it felt like we were going to be a whole mini series ourselves, but I think we were shrunk down to a rather shorter passage than we had originally been led to believe. But I'm sure it's available somewhere on YouTube. Some of us are there performing in the finest possible manner. Dick?
Sorry, I've got another one.
No.
Can you remind me why the Sebastien is on that funny angle to the Mary Street?
Yeah, it's a puzzle. Several reasons have been floated. One is that it's inserted into a pre-existing residential area that's on a different alignment, and that the Sebastien Avenue is the monumentalization of a pre-existing roadway. And there are indications underneath the museum and in a couple of other places where there's a possible alignment that coincides with that of the Sebastien, which is different from the alignment on the west side of the main street. But that is yet to be verified. We don't know if there was an alternative grid orientation on the eastern side of the main street, or whether it was just a random old style jumble of streets.
I'm not planning to sacrifice the big house.
See above. Yes, Nafsal. Yeah. We've just finished 2 years ago a major project, which was a partial anastylosis of part of the entranceway to the basilica. That's now done, combined with a complete display of the whole of the Edict of Maximum Prices of the Emperor Diocletian in Latin, Turkish, and English. You can go and read the whole thing there, and many do. So that project is finished. That was very generously funded by Murat Ulka. I mean, of course, if someone gave us a lot more money and they said they loved the basilica, we could put a lot more. We could put a lot more of it up if you would like. Yes.
Very interesting photograph inside the governor's house,
Yes.
and it showed quite clearly the floor.
Yes.
So I couldn't make out whether it was actually tiles that were being cleared. It was.
Very sharp eyes. Yes. As you entered the reception room of the governor's house, there was a large, shallow pool, which was indeed had a beautiful cut marble floor, and then what you couldn't see around that, now covered with this much of sand and earth, are mosaics. It was a very rich house. It had beautiful architectural ornament, beautiful little pilaster capitals with figures on them. It had figured mosaics. It had the statue of the governor, and it had that, as you saw, beautiful cut marble floor.
Why no photos then?
Sorry?
Why no photos?
No photos of what?
Those mosaics.
They're a bit old hat. They were found, 30
Oh,
years ago. 30 years ago. I'm giving you a tiny slice of 2024. It could be so much more. We have a season of 8 to 9 weeks, from early July to the end of August. It's getting hotter. It used to be very hot in August, now it's very hot in July as well. But we're high up, and there's a bit of a breeze. It's not too bad. The site is open to the public 365 days a year. And if anyone planning a trip, be prepared for a little bit of a major disappointment. The museum, the wonderful museum that many people go there for, as well as the site, is closed. It was condemned for its supposed unsafety after the Hatay earthquakes a couple of years ago. So it's now in the period of being reinforced. But how long that will take, I don't know. But it will certainly be closed all of this year. It's a shame because it's not dangerous. It's a one-story building and it's not about to collapse. On restoring the museum, no, I went to the first meeting last week in Ankara to discuss how it might be done. We're still discussing how to do it. That's the law. It's a bit like a late antique law. It's more of an aspiration than a reality. It's the government would like, the Ministry of Culture would like more projects to work longer so that more is excavated so that it brings more tourists. One can see the logic. But working on an excavation like this all year round, not only is it impossible to work in the winter, but you would produce so much stuff, you couldn't possibly deal with it. You couldn't conserve it, study it, store it, display it. So many projects are now working 12 months a year, but they're excavating only some of that and then doing study work for the rest of the time. And of course, whether we're there or not, we're always doing study work too. Yes. In a modest way.
You mentioned the fire break.
Yeah.
Is there still, obviously there is still considerable danger from fires?
It gets very hot and dry in the summer, and the grass grows vigorously in the spring, and then it dries out suddenly, and that dried grass creates a huge fire hazard. So we need to cut it. And this year it was so bad that the ministry ordered this very radical measure of dragging a harrow all around the centre of the city where all the monuments are to create a fire break. But putting a harrow across grass like that is not a way to stop it growing. It's a way to ensure it will grow even more vigorously when it comes back. It fixed it for the season, but it will create.
Do it every year.
We have to cut the grass vigorously every year. We will not harrow it every year unless ordered to do so. Of course, you turn the soil over and it aerates it, and the grass is off again.
Thank you very much indeed. Do we have any more questions? Is there anything that the Friends should be doing? Could I ask that?
The Friends are doing an absolutely wonderful, supportive job in making all of this incredible work possible. And we thank you deeply from the bottom of our hearts, because you are the without which not of this whole endeavour. More of the same, please, John.
William, did you have anything else you would like to?
Just say that there are drinks next time. And nipples as well. And I'll try and put the lights on, but I don't.
Well, thank you very, very much for coming this evening.
They've got a service here and they'll do it for you, but they chose to go with it. You just thought you're saving a bit of money.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's in always a problem.
No, well, it works.
They did.